Chapter 7. Sit with us. A few weeks later, Jed asked, "Should we invite him over?" We were sitting on the rocks underneath the big pine tree at the edge of the playground. This cluster of 5 big fat sandstone boulders that had been cut in half so they were smooth on top and made good seats and tables. Every year it was an unspoken rule that only Year 6 students got to hang out at the rocks. I looked where Jed was pointing, then quickly turned away. "Fred, do you—" Jed started again, but I shook my head, no. Jed, Aiden and Kira and I were sitting together while most of what was left of Year 6 were playing footy on the oval. Sam was sitting by himself on a low bench outside the brick classrooms on the other side of the playground. "It's cool if you want to go get him," Aiden said as he bit into his sandwich. He kept talking as he chewed. "If it's just him, it's not too bad, but the other babies can't come over." The babies was what Aiden wanted us to call the Year 5s. Annika and Sam moved to Sorrento 2 years ago. Sam had been at PNP the whole time, but I never paid him any attention, not even after Annika and Luca met at one of the parent-teacher evenings and started going out. I guess I kind of remember him playing with other kids in his year, but older kids didn't pay attention to younger ones, so I didn't know for sure. Kira rolled her eyes. "Stop pressuring her," she said to Aiden. "Do you reckon if you were stuck in a classroom with your sisters, you'd want to hang out with them at lunchtime too?" I didn't correct Kira about Sam being my brother, but only because she made a good point. Aiden had 2 younger sisters, the twin terrors we called them, in Year 3. He shuddered and shook his head at Kira, but then looked back to where Sam was sitting. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe I would if they looked that pathetic." I remember Luca's words from a few weeks earlier, after the awful thing I'd done to Sam at Arthur's seat. He'd said I needed to know what he knew. He said I needed to know that I could be better and kinder, like it was a choice. But being better and kinder is like being one big happy family. It's one thing to say it, another thing to do it. "He walks with us to school and home every day. That's enough," I said. "He doesn't need to sit with us too." Mr. Curry was quiet and serious and young, easily the youngest teacher at PNP, but he acted like he was the older than my pop. The one thing about Mr. Curry was the trick he used to get us all to quieten down. He'd make just one of his bushy eyebrows arch up, the right one, which was something we all loved because it reminded us of a guy from the World Wrestling Federation called The Rock. When Mr. Curry did the eyebrow arch, it was a sign to get serious and pay attention. By the time his eyebrow went down again, we'd have stopped fidgeting and the room would be silent. "Geography is not just about flags, maps and compasses or naming capital cities," Mr. Curry was saying, and I stopped the work I was doing on tectonic plates to listen. "What geography is really about is human beings and how we spread across the Earth's surface, how what we do affects the physical features of this planet and the atmosphere, and how the Earth affects us too." Then Mr. Curry clapped his hands so loudly it made us all jump a little in our seats. "Okay, Year 5, I want you to make a fist and then grab a pen with your other hand." All us Year 6s remembered this from the year before, and we watched as the Year 5s did exactly that, made fists and reached for their pens. "Your fist is a valley and your knuckles are mountains and hilltops. I want you to start by drawing a small circle around the top of each of your knuckles, then a circle around each of those circles, and then a slightly bigger circle around those ones, and keep going until the lines make their way down from the mountains of your knuckles to the valley of your wrist." When they finished, everyone laid their hands flat on their desks. What you've just made are contour lines, sometimes called level lines, which join points of equal height above the sea level. He pointed to the map stuck to the board behind him. A topographical map is illustrated with contour lines that show valleys and hills and the steepness or gentleness of slopes, the smallest point being the highest. I looked at the Year 5s one table over and saw them all staring at the shaky lines on their hands. Mr. Curry asked, "What do the lines look like?" And then a voice down the back said, "Oh, they kind of look like ripples." I whipped around to follow the answer, and my eyes went straight to Sam. He slowly lowered his hand and pushed his new black glasses up his nose. Mr. Curry clapped again. "Thank you, Sam. That's a brilliant observation." I turned back to the front and found Mr. Curry's eyes on me. "Maybe there's more than one budding geographer in your family," he said and smiled. I felt my face heat up, but I didn't know if it was anger or embarrassment or both, and I didn't know why it all annoyed me so much. Mr. Curry went back to pacing, holding his hands out wide while he talked. He stopped at the front of the room. "And here's the thing, we don't rely on maps to tell us where we're going so much as where we've been. because where we live has such an impact on who we are and who we will be, that is, may well be the thing that defines us more than any other. Then Mr. Curry put his hands behind his back and cleared his throat. You might have been noticing some things on the evening news or read about them in the paper. I expect you all, particularly Year 6, to read and follow the news regularly. He paused for a second and I frowned. There was something wrong with Mr. Curry's voice. It sounded off somehow. We're very lucky to live where we do. Not everyone in the world is as fortunate. And then he stopped again, shook his head, and brought his hands back around to clasp in front of him. Right, where were we? Back to volcanoes for some and mountains for others. The difference between crust and magma. And just like that, his voice was back to normal.